Gorillas are often considered to be one of the largest, strongest, and buffest animals in the animal kingdom. If you go to a zoo and you look at a gorilla, you're gonna be mocked by him, guaranteed. A typical adult male gorilla can weigh between 350 to 600 pounds. To put that in perspective, most pro bodybuilders weigh anywhere between the 200 to 300 range. The question I'm asking with this video is, what would happen if this unit decided to also lift the iron? I don't mean like pick up a dumbbell every once in a while or do a couple push-ups. I mean if a gorilla actually followed a structured workout plan, what would happen to him and his physique? First, let's explore why gorillas are so buff in the first place. This is partly due to their activity level, which includes swinging and climbing and being very active in nature, and having to use your own body weight is a form of calisthenics that gorillas are constantly doing. More importantly, however, is the fact that gorillas are deficient in a protein found in humans known as myostatin. The main purpose of myostatin in mammals and humans is to inhibit skeletal muscle growth. This is in an effort to prevent us from building too much muscle and putting a cap on the amount of muscle a human can achieve. There are cases of cattle and other mammals being deficient in myostatin, such as these cows or this really buff greyhound, and there are certain people who were also deficient in myostatin, such as Flex Wheeler. Now if you look at all these three images, the common trend is these guys are built like a house. If you take an animal with a myostatin deficiency and have it perform actions in the wild that would induce some sort of hypertrophy due to calisthenic-like movements, then it makes sense why a gorilla would be so massive in the first place. This also explains gorillas' diets, as most gorillas are often seen eating plants and other sources that aren't that rich in protein. However, due to this myostatin deficiency, they don't really need a lot of protein to build a lot of muscle. Another important thing to consider is the anatomy of a gorilla. The compound movements that humans designed were designed, of course, for humans. They weren't really designed for a gorilla. So a gorilla cannot perform a deadlift the same way you or I can perform a deadlift, or a gorilla cannot perform a squat the same way you and I can perform a squat. The only real movements a gorilla can do that won't stray far from the way a human would do it would be anything that involves the upper body. In other words, bicep curls, tricep pushdowns, anything that involves the chest and shoulders, and perhaps some back movements. Basically what I'm saying is a gorilla would be a bro lifter. So if you take a gorilla and have it run an upper body focus program for a couple months, what would be the result? The result would be muscle growth. Because despite this myostatin deficiency, the mechanisms that muscle is grown is still the same for both us and for the gorillas. Muscle hypertrophy occurs because of microfiber tails in the muscle, basically giving your body a reason to grow the muscle by injuring yourself very slightly, so the body recognizes that injury and recognizes the need to grow more muscle, and then hence you recover and your muscle gets bigger, hence you can do more damage to the muscle, and then the process repeats itself. This wouldn't change for a gorilla, it would just be accelerated due to this increase in myostatin. So yes, a gorilla would grow bigger if it lifted weights. But does it really need to? Like I said, gorillas are already performing calisthenic movements. They don't really need to spend time lifting weights or using barbells or dumbbells if they're already using nature as their gym. Not to mention, gorillas doing bicep curls or tricep pushdowns will also be very awkward for them, and they will spend more time trying to learn the movements with proper form than actually just being in nature and getting muscle growth in that way. Regardless, let's say you are able to teach a gorilla proper form and he's able to perform these movements perfectly. Would muscle growth still occur? Yes, the mechanisms are the same for us as it is for them. But is this really practical? You would only really be able to do this to a gorilla that's in a zoo and that is fed by other people and doesn't have to feed himself. The average gorilla consumes about 40 pounds of food per day. Now the average gorilla that has lifted the iron would need more food, as he would have built more muscle tissue, causing a greater demand for food. Muscle is more metabolically active, meaning that if you have a lot of muscle, you need a lot of food. This is why bodybuilders can be seen eating 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day and not being fat. This applies to gorillas, meaning that if a gorilla lifted weights and had more muscle tissue, then he would need more food. This really wouldn't be a problem in a zoo because he would be fed by the zoo staff, but in the wild, this is a different story. This actually gets into why myostatin exists in the first place. To sum it up, too much muscle is not very practical. If you go back to the days where humanity had to hunt for its food and couldn't go to Publix to pick something up, having too much muscle meant that you had to eat a lot more, meaning that you had to hunt more food and you couldn't survive as long without food. This is actually what happened during the Ice Age and one of the key factors that led to the downfall of the Neanderthal and the rise of the Homo sapiens. Because the Neanderthal needed more food to sustain themselves and food was becoming more scarce, they began to die out and starve, while humanity with less muscle was able to survive a little bit longer because they didn't need that much food to live. So a wild gorilla who would have to hunt for his own food would actually suffer from this increase in muscle mass because now he has to eat more and spend more time eating and less time resting and doing other activities. So to answer the question that's in the title of this video, would a gorilla experience hypertrophy from lifting weights? He most certainly would. However, it's not very practical for a gorilla to do so. It would only really be a waste of time to try to teach a gorilla compound movements and proper form and have it follow a structured workout routine, all about hoping he won't rip your spine from your body, than it would be to just let the gorilla live out its life in nature. So gorillas are really buff because of the lack of myostatin, and it would be a waste of time to give them more muscle mass because they would just have to eat more, and it would cost more to keep them alive in a zoo, and it would cost more to keep them alive in nature because they would have to fend for themselves a lot more. That being said, if a gorilla decided to lift weights, he would destroy all record numbers that currently held, which would be an interesting sight to see. So if a zoo does want to teach a gorilla how to lift weights just for the attraction to get more people, that's an idea for them. That's the end of the video. I hope it was kind of interesting. Thank you for watching, and